Welcome back to Casual Bias Rugby. This is a weekend review of just everything combined. We're just talking a bit of rugby because this weekend was a proper hyped up weekend of rugby. We had the Six Nations, massive games in terms of the Kolkata Cup. We had Italy versus France. We had the start of the Super Rugby. We had Sevens with Antoine Dupont making his debut. And I think when you have so much hype around a weekend of rugby, you kind of have to do a review. And overall, I don't think I'm the only one that's going to say this, but I think I'm kind of a bit disappointed with how it all turned out. And let's start with the Six Nations, right? Because we hyped up the Kolkata Cup so much, and this whole tournament as a whole, just thinking about full contact, you expected a lot of eyes on the sport for this tournament, especially the Six Nations, right? And I feel it hasn't lived up to expectations whatsoever. I was very impressed with the Ireland versus Wales game. Just remember, all of this is from an outsider's perspective. So I was impressed with that game. It felt like a rivalry without real major fights or anything. I felt it was a good start to the weekend to get us up and running. But obviously knowing that we still have the big games to come. And in yesterday's video, I literally spoke about how big of a disappointment the Kolkata Cup was, right? Because you had an insane rivalry of Scotland versus England. England all to play for in the last 7 or in the last 6 at the time. They only had 1 victory over Scotland for the Kolkata Cup. And then literally the game felt like a total shambles. You had 2 attack-minded teams usually that really could get at the other teams' defense. The defense of both teams are so vulnerable, but both teams decided, listen, let's not attack the gain line whatsoever. And I just felt it was a total letdown in terms of that. And then ending it off with Italy versus France, where you have, it's just so many errors. It was such an error-prone weekend for the Six Nations, because I'm comparing it to the Super Rugby. Now, obviously, you can't compare franchise rugby really to international rugby. It's not the same game at all. But how is there more basic errors in international rugby than there was in the Super Rugby? Because I loved this weekend of Super Rugby. I thought it was outstanding. I think the All Blacks are going to be very, very scary because obviously Scott Robertson came out and said, listen, the All Blacks are going to focus on pure attacking, running, high-paced gameplay. And that's even faster than they were already. And you can see how the franchise teams, the Crusaders, the Chiefs, the Blues, all of them really focused on getting that ball out quickly, spreading it wide. The scrums were quick, the lineouts were quick. Everything was so quick. Going over to the international game where it was so slow. Now, I understand it's international rugby, but let's take that away. Just the basic errors. I think there was more errors in the international game than there were in the franchise game. Where in the franchise game, they decide to try something a bit more innovative, where you can understand where there's errors, handling errors and stuff being made. Where in the international game, it's usually kept a bit more tight, you know, less place for errors to be made. I just overall think if you have such a hyped up weekend and 2 out of the 3 games are utter shambles, those 2 games make the Irish and Wales game look a bit worse because you knew those games were bigger, so you had lower expectations for the Ireland and Wales game. And now it just feels almost embarrassing, especially from an outside perspective. Like, I have no emotional investment in all of these games, so you can let me know if you see it a bit different. But it feels like a bad tournament so far, the Six Nations, especially with the hype around it and the new eyes on it. Like, if you had to tell a new watcher of rugby, listen, we recommend you to watch rugby. And you had to watch the Super Rugby and you had to watch the Six Nations. You would never turn the Six Nations game on ever again. You'd think it's absolute shambles. And you don't like seeing that. It's very frustrating to watch it. And that's not even having any emotional feel in it. So I really want to get your perspectives on it. And I really felt like we had to talk about it. But now let's move on to some positive things for each team. Okay, that's my little rant done and dusted. Let's start off with the Kolkata Cup. Obviously disappointing for England, jubilation for Scotland. Well done to Scotland. I think in the end they deserved the victory. I think England were the better team in the first half, but they just like let Scotland come in. It was a smash and grab victory for them in the first half, and then in the second half just ran away with it a bit. I think Wabosa for England, when he came on, you saw what he could do. He has to start the next game. I think Furbank, if he took out his try, pretty much useless until England finally decided, listen, let's actually run the ball. So Wabosa and Furbank, I'd still play the two of them. Unless you want to pull in Freddie Stewart, no issues with that. But if you have those players, you have to play running rugby. You can't bomb the ball in the air and hope for the best if you have running backline players. Obviously, Duan van der Merwe, born in South Africa. If you're born in South Africa, you know you break English hearts. That's just how it works. It's rugby heritage. We move on. Well done to Scotland. They've got, out of the past 7 years, they've got 6 Kolkata Cups, which is absolutely extraordinary, fighting back in history. So well done on Scotland. Moving on, Ireland. I don't even want to talk about their game versus Wales because there's a big thing now, and they've won the Six Nations. Okay, let's not beat around the bush. I want to know from the Irish perspectives how confident you are going up against South Africa when, I think it's July, when you come down to us in July. As a South African, yesterday I said, I am a bit nervous, because obviously I have nothing to compare it with, and Ireland look unstoppable at the moment. Obviously, we don't have an international squad or anything. We have our training squads, obviously, a couple of standout players, but a lot of our players play in Japan, and we don't get to watch the Japanese rugby at the moment. So I still believe South Africa has enough to get it done. It's hard to beat South Africa in South Africa, but I'm not going to be biased in this video. I know it's casual bias rugby, but let's be objective. And Ireland seriously looked like they could be the best team in the world. Obviously, that gets decided in July, in my opinion. Ireland very much with a more set team going into that game. I think there's a lot of vacancies in the South African team at the moment. Remember, new coaching staff, a couple of players retired, but I also think that brings out a bit of hunger in our guys. And you've seen that in the URC, the likes of a Daimani, Inku van Wyk, those like Sasha. Those guys are coming through, so they'll be hungry as well. So it will kind of be, I wouldn't say a new South African team, but there will be a couple of new names, and I think they will put their hands up. I mean, who better to challenge than the Irish, who's on top form at the moment, and then obviously that's preparation going into the Rugby Championship. So I just want to know, as Irish fans, how are you feeling coming down to South Africa? Obviously, South Africa overall in history has more wins, but the last 8 years we haven't had a victory against Ireland. Obviously, all of them have been played at Aviva at the end of our season, but I'm not going to make excuses. Ireland were the better team on that night. They deserve to win those games. But I'm really hyped up and really excited for that. For that, you know, it's not going to be a dull affair like some of these games in the Six Nations has been. So very excited for that one. And then the one that I kind of want to talk about, because I know there's a large New Zealand fan base also on this channel, and I wanted to show them some love, because I feel Super Rugby is kind of the one tournament that everyone's been having a dig at, right? Saying it's died down after the Saffas has left. I think the Super Rugby is special. I think it's so different to any other form of rugby union that we have. It's like kind of a mixture between rugby league and rugby union, because there's not a lot of defensive work going on, let's be honest, right? But it's so beautiful to watch. I really prefer this above even the Super Rugby. I prefer it above the Investec Champions Cup. I just love watching the Super Rugby, waking up in South Africa on a Saturday morning, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and seeing a beautiful game of running rugby is glorious to watch. And even the Reds Waratahs game, now I know most people would talk about the Chiefs Crusaders game, but I think the Reds Waratahs game was also beautiful to watch. I just think it has like a special place in my heart, just because of how beautiful the running rugby is. You just see new moves, people trying to invent stuff. Obviously, the All Blacks have a new coaching staff. They'll probably have a newish team, a lot of vacancies in their squads, and the Super Rugby is just going to show you how many guys put their hand up to say, listen, we want a spot in the All Blacks jersey, in that All Blacks jersey. So I wanted to take a special little time and really show some appreciation to to the Super Rugby that's been getting a lot of hate. I think this tournament is something that should just keep on going. I really hope the New Zealanders and the Aussies really come out to support the Super Rugby, because it is such a beautiful game. It's so different to what we are used to seeing with tight games, maybe a rainy game, kicking game. It's different. It gives you a nice balance between all of it. And I think if it wasn't for the Super Rugby, this game would have been this weekend would have been so dull. Just talking about the Six Nations, because it hasn't been a good weekend for the Six Nations. I'm not saying it's a bad tournament. Don't get me wrong, people. I think it's a great tournament, especially if you're emotionally invested. It's the biggest one in Europe, obviously. But I think without the Super Rugby this weekend, it could have been a total shit show. So please remember to like and subscribe to the channel. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. And I hope you enjoyed this one where we just talked a bit of rugby. Obviously, I would love for you guys to engage in the channel. So let me know what you thought about it. If you watch both tournaments, give me your input on both tournaments. If you just watch Super Rugby, just talk about the Super Rugby. If you just watch the Six Nations, let's talk about the Six Nations. Let me know if you agree, disagree. Just tell me everything. Thank you very much. See you next time. Bye.